There was a promise I made 60 years ago. A promise to a man you think you know. A promise I've kept through war and peace, through the fall of kingdoms and the return of kings, through everything that's happened in Middle-earth since that day in the wilderness when I saw something I was never supposed to see. I'm breaking that promise now, because I'm old and my time is short, and someone needs to know the truth about Gandalf the Grey before I die and take it to my grave. You think you know him? The Wanderer, the Wizard, the old man with the pointed hat who tells stories and smokes pipeweed and seems content to let braver men fight the battles while he offers advice from the sidelines. But what if everything you think you know about Gandalf is but a fraction of who he is? I don't mean malicious lies, to be clear, but necessary half-truths, a lie he tells every day, with every step, with every choice, to appear weak when he's anything but. What if the wandering wizard act isn't who he is? It's who he's pretending to be. And what if there's a reason for that pretense? A reason so important that he's spent thousands of years maintaining it, even when it costs lives, even when people die who could have been saved. I'm going to tell you what I saw in a valley in Eriador during the War of the North. What Gandalf did when he thought no one who mattered was watching. What he became for just a few minutes on a blood-soaked battlefield when there was no other choice. And I'm going to tell you why he made me promise never to speak of it. Why one of the strongest beings in Middle-earth walks the roads like a beggar. Why he lets good men die fighting enemies he could destroy with a word. By the time I'm done, you'll understand something about power that most people never learn. Something about strength and restraint and the difference between the two. But here's what I need you to understand first. Gandalf isn't weak. He's never been weak. He's just wise enough to know that some power should never be used, even when using it could save lives, even when holding back seems cruel. Even when everything in you is screaming to act, to save, to do something. The question I've been asking myself for 60 years is this: was he right to hold back all those other times? Or was the moment I witnessed, the moment he finally unleashed what he really was that the mistake? I still don't know the answer, but I know what I saw, and I know it changed everything I thought I understood about strength, about wisdom, about what it means to have power and choose not to use it. My name is Halbarad, son of Haleth. I was a ranger of the north, one of the Dunedain, the last descendants of the ancient kingdom of Arnor. We were the hidden watch, the silent guardians that the rest of Middle-earth never knew existed. While farmers tilled their fields and merchants counted their coins and ordinary people lived ordinary lives, we patrolled the borders. We fought the things that crept down from the ruins of Angmar. We tracked orc bands before they could reach settlements. We kept the roads safe from dangers that most people didn't even know existed. It was hard work, brutal work. We lived in the wilderness, slept under stars, went months without seeing a proper bed or a hot meal. We wore rough clothes and carried worn weapons and looked like bandits to anyone who saw us. Most people crossed the street when we came to town. They didn't know we were nobility, the last remnants of the line of kings. They just saw rough, dangerous men who smelled of the wild. They didn't know we were all that stood between them and the darkness. I'd been a ranger for 20 years when this story begins. Started when I was 18, fresh-faced and convinced I was going to be a hero. The wilderness had beaten that notion out of me pretty quickly. There's no glory in ranger work, just cold nights and hard marches and fights that nobody ever hears about. But I was good at it. Good tracker, good fighter. Good at the kind of patience that lets you watch an orc camp for 3 days straight without moving, waiting for the right moment to strike. Good enough that when the chieftain, our hidden king, the heir of Isildur, living in disguise among his own rangers, when he had a mission that required the best, I was chosen. The mission came down in early spring. I was summoned to a hidden camp in the Troll Shores, one of our permanent bases concealed in caves that had been used by rangers for generations. When I arrived, I found 5 other rangers already there. I knew them all. Ortha, built like a bear and just as strong. Malbeth, our best tracker, could follow a trail 3 weeks old through running water. Dunhair, who could put an arrow through an orc's eye at 100 paces in the dark. Kuron, younger than the rest of us, but skilled with a blade. And Eraglas, who'd been ranging for 30 years and had more scars than I could count. The best of the best. Which meant this mission was important. And sitting by the campfire, looking like someone's traveling grandfather, was Gandalf. I'd seen him before, of course. He came through the north regularly, always traveling, always asking questions, always seeming to know more about our business than an outsider should. The rangers trusted him. The chieftain trusted him completely. He'd helped us more times than I could count, warnings about enemy movements, advice about threats we couldn't see, information that always turned out to be accurate. But I'd never worked directly with him before. Never been on a mission where he was involved. He looked exactly like the stories describe. Grey robes that had seen better days, a pointed hat, battered from travel, a long beard, more grey than white, a wooden staff that looked like something he'd picked up in a forest somewhere. He was smoking a pipe, sending up lazy rings of smoke that drifted up into the cave's darkness. He looked old, tired, harmless. But his eyes, when he looked up and met my gaze, his eyes were different. Sharp and bright and impossibly deep. Like looking into water so clear you could see all the way to the bottom. Except there was no bottom. Just depth going down forever. I looked away first. Couldn't help it. The chieftain explained the mission. We were to travel to the ruins of Fornost, to the old royal treasury that had been sealed when the city fell. There was something there, hidden in a vault that only the chieftain's line knew about. We were to retrieve it and transport it to Rivendell, to Lord Elrond, where it would be kept safe. "What is it?" Orthier asked. Practical man, always wanted to know what he was risking his life for. The chieftain hesitated, then reached into his pack and pulled out a small wooden box. He opened it. Inside, on black velvet, was a ring. Not a simple band. This was art. A serpent coiled around itself, scales delicate and perfect. 2 green gems for eyes that seemed to catch the firelight and hold it. The gold had a strange quality, not shiny like new gold, but with a depth to it, like it held its own light deep inside the metal. "The ring of Borahir," the chieftain said quietly, "passed down from Barahir to Beren in the First Age, from Beren to his son Dior, from Dior through the line of kings of Númenor and Arnor to my ancestors. It's been in my family's keeping for 3,000 years. I stared at it. We all did. This wasn't just jewelry. This was history itself. This was a piece of the First Age, when the world was young and Morgoth still walked in darkness and heroes did deeds that seemed impossible now. Why move it? I asked. It's been safe in Fornost for years. The chieftain's face darkened. Sauron's forces have been searching the north more systematically than ever. They're not just raiding anymore. They're looking for something specific. We have intelligence that suggests they know about the ring. If they find it before we move it." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Gandalf spoke for the first time. His voice was rougher than I expected, worn like old leather. The enemy has been trying to erase any trace of the Númenórean bloodline for centuries, he said. Any symbol of their survival. Any proof that the line of kings continues. He wants to ensure that when he finally moves against the West, there's no one left who can unite the free peoples against him. No one with the legitimacy, the lineage, the right to stand as king. The Ring of Barahir is such a symbol. More than a symbol, it's proof. Proof of an unbroken line stretching back to the First Age. If Sauron finds it, he won't just destroy it, he'll corrupt it. Turn it into a mockery. Make sure that even if someone claims the kingship in the future, they can't prove it. They're just another man with an old title and no authority. Then we make sure he doesn't find it, Eraglas said. Simple, direct. That was his way. The plan was straightforward. 7 of us. Total. 6 rangers and Gandalf. We'd travel to Fornost, retrieve the ring from the treasury, and transport it to Rivendell. Fast and quiet. Avoid settlements, stay off the roads, move through wilderness where we had the advantage. Should take about 2 weeks round trip if everything went smoothly. Everything didn't go smoothly. We left at dusk 2 days later. The chieftain gave each of us 1 of 3 keys needed to open the vault. Security measure. No one person could access the ring alone. We'd have to work together. The journey to Fornost took 5 days through country I knew well. Rolling hills covered in old forest. Streams that ran clear and cold from the mountains. Roads that were barely suggestions anymore, overgrown and broken from centuries of neglect. This had all been settled land once. Farms and villages and towns. Now it was wilderness, reclaimed by nature after Angmar's wars had driven everyone away. Gandalf set the pace, and he was faster than he looked. That old man's shuffle was deceptive. He could cover ground when he needed to, and he never seemed to tire. The rest of us would be breathing hard after a long climb, and he'd be waiting at the top, not even winded, usually having found some interesting plant or stone to examine while he waited. We didn't talk much. Rangers don't, generally. We communicate with gestures, with shared glances, with the kind of understanding that comes from working together for years. Silence is safer in the wild. Sound carries. Words can give you away. But Gandalf talked, not constantly, not annoyingly, but he'd make observations, point out a bird's nest and tell you what species lived there and where they'd migrated from. He'd comment on the land, on the way water had carved the hills, on the age of certain rock formations. He told stories. On the second night, while we sat around a carefully hidden fire, he told us about Fornost. I was there once, he said, smoke from his pipe drifting up into the darkness. Long before the Witch King came, long before the wars. It was beautiful, more beautiful than Minas Tirith ever was. Though don't tell the Gondorians I said that. What was it like? Curon asked, youngest of our group. Still had that hunger for stories, for history. The rest of us had learned not to ask about the past. Too painful. Gandalf's eyes got distant, remembering. There were bells, he said. Great bells in towers throughout the city. They rang every evening at sunset. Different bells, different notes, all harmonizing together. You could hear them for miles. Farmers in the fields would stop their work and listen. Travelers on the roads would pause. For 5 minutes, the whole region would go quiet and just listen. The most beautiful sound I've ever heard. What happened to the bells? Curon asked. The Witch King melted them down, Gandalf said. His voice had gone cold. Made weapons from them. Swords and spearheads. so that every time his forces killed someone, they were killing them with the very thing that had brought joy. That's what evil does. It doesn't just destroy, it corrupts. It takes something beautiful and turns it into a weapon. Makes you forget there was ever anything worth saving in the first place. He was quiet after that. We all were. On the fourth day, we started seeing signs, old campfires, carefully hidden but not hidden enough, tracks in the mud near a stream, booted feet, too large to be human, too disciplined to be random travelers, orcs, and they'd been through here recently. Scouts, Orthir said, examining the tracks, maybe a week old, heading north. Away from Fornost, Malbeth added. Might have missed us by days. But Gandalf was frowning. He'd been frowning more as we got closer to our destination. Several times I'd caught him stopping, staff in hand, head tilted like he was listening to something none of the rest of us could hear. "What is it?" I asked him once. "I don't know," he said, which didn't make me feel better. "Something feels wrong. The land feels watched." I looked around. Forest, hills, a stream in the distance, nothing unusual. "I don't see anything," I said. "Neither do I," Gandalf replied. "That's what worries me." We reached Fornost on the evening of the 5th day. The ruins appeared on the horizon as the sun was setting. Broken walls silhouetted against the red sky like broken teeth. Once this had been a great city, the capital of Arnor, home to tens of thousands. Now it was a graveyard. We approached carefully. Even in ruins, Fornost wasn't safe. Things lived in the wreckage, not just animals, darker things. Spirits of the dead who died badly and never found rest. Orcs sometimes made camps in the old buildings, and there were rumors of worse things. Things that had been left behind when the Witch King retreated north. Things that were still there, waiting in the darkness. "Stay close," Gandalf said, as we entered through what had once been the main gate. "This place has a long memory, and some memories are dangerous." The ruins were worse up close. Streets cracked and overgrown with weeds. Buildings collapsed into themselves, leaving only shells. Stone that had once been carved with beautiful designs was now scarred and broken. Everywhere you looked, there were signs of violence. Scorch marks on walls, bones half buried in the dirt, weapons rusted into shapeless lumps of metal, and over it all, that sense of wrongness. Like the air itself was tainted, like the stone remembered what had happened here and was still angry about it. We moved through the ruins in silence, following Gandalf. He seemed to know where he was going, navigating through collapsed streets and around dangerous-looking buildings without hesitation. Twice he stopped us, held up a hand, waited. I never saw what he was waiting for, but both times I felt something, a presence, watching from the shadows that faded after a few moments. The old royal treasury was in what had been the heart of the city, near where the king's palace had stood. The palace was gone now, nothing but foundation stones and rubble. But the treasury had been built to last, built into bedrock, protected by walls 3 feet thick, designed to survive even if the rest of the city fell. It had survived. Barely. The entrance was hidden behind a false wall that had been made to look like part of a collapsed building. You'd walk past it 100 times and never see it unless you knew exactly where to look. Gandalf knew where to look. He moved aside some rubble, revealing a door, heavy iron, bound with bands of mithril that still gleamed faintly in the dying light. There were 3 keyholes. We each produced our keys. Orthir's was silver, Malbeth's was bronze, mine was iron, cold and heavy in my hand. "Together," Gandalf said, "on my count. 3, 2, 1. We turned the keys simultaneously. Something deep inside the door clicked. Mechanisms that hadn't moved in decades groaned and shifted. The door swung open slowly, revealing stairs leading down into darkness. Gandalf produced a light. Not a torch, just light, glowing from the top of his staff like captured moonlight. We descended. The stairs went down for what felt like forever. Down into the bedrock, into chambers that had been carved from living stone. The air grew colder. I could hear water dripping somewhere, and something else. A sound like breathing, but distant. So distant it might have been my imagination. We reached the bottom. A corridor stretched ahead, lined with ancient doors. Most were sealed, but Gandalf led us to one specific door at the corridor's end. This door had no lock, just a seal, a design worked into the metal, the Star of Elendel, the symbol of the royal line. "Stand back," Gandalf said. He raised his staff and spoke a single word. I didn't recognize the language. Wasn't Westron or Sindarin or any elvish tongue I'd heard. Something older. The word seemed to resonate, to echo in ways that didn't make sense in a stone corridor. The seal glowed, then faded. The door swung open. Inside was a small chamber, empty except for a single stone pedestal in the center. On the pedestal was a wooden box. Arthur approached it with careful hands. The wood was old, but perfectly preserved. Some kind of cedar, carved with intricate patterns. He lifted the lid. The ring of Barahir lay inside, on black velvet. Seeing it in person was different than seeing it in the chieftain's camp. Here, in this place, where it had been kept for so long, it seemed to glow with its own light. The green gems in the serpent's eyes caught our lamplight and held it, made it brighter somehow. The gold seemed to pulse, very faintly, like it had a heartbeat. I felt something looking at it. Not greed, not desire, just recognition. Like I was looking at something important. Something that mattered more than I could understand. "Quickly," Gandalf said. His voice was tense, urgent. "Take it and let's go. We've stayed too long already." Arthur didn't argue. He closed the box, secured it in a leather case designed specifically for this purpose, and put the case in his pack. We sealed the vault, retraced our steps up the stairs, locked the iron door behind us. We'd just cleared the treasury entrance when Gandalf stopped. Just stopped dead. Went completely still. "What?" I started to say. He held up his hand, silent, listening. I listened too. At first I heard nothing, just the wind moving through the ruins. Then, something else. Distant but getting closer. A rhythmic sound. Thump, thump, thump. "Drums," Gandalf said quietly. "Orc drums. They're coming." "How many?" Orthir asked. Gandalf's face was pale in the twilight. "Too many. We need to move. Now." We moved. Through the ruins, over broken streets, around collapsed buildings. Behind us the drums got louder. And then we heard the screaming. That high-pitched war cry orcs make when they're hunting. The sound that's designed to freeze your blood, to make prey panic and run blind. We weren't panicking. We were rangers. We'd been hunted before, but we were running hard, and that was enough. We burst out of Fornost's main gate and into open country. There was an old road, barely visible anymore, just a suggestion of paving stones under grass, that led south. If we could reach the ford at the Brandywine, we could cross into the Shire lands. Orcs rarely ventured that far. Too close to civilized lands. Too much risk of organized resistance. But the ford was 20 miles away, and we had to cross open country to reach it. We ran for 2 miles. The drums faded behind us. Maybe we'd lost them. Maybe they'd given up. Maybe... "Stop," Gandalf said. We stopped, breathing hard, looking at him. He was staring ahead, at the small valley between two hills that we'd have to cross to continue south. "It's a trap," he said quietly. "How do you know?" Malbeth asked. "Because it's what I would do," Gandalf said. "The drums behind us. The easy escape route ahead. Drive prey into the kill zone and close the trap." "We can go around," Eraglas suggested. "They'll have thought of that too," Gandalf said. "The question is whether we can break through before they close the trap completely." "Or we stand and fight here," Orthier said. "Better terrain. Higher ground." Gandalf shook his head. "If we stop, they'll surround us. Our only chance is speed. Through the valley, before they're ready." We went through the valley. They were ready. They came from both sides. Orcs pouring over the hills like water. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Big ones too. Uruks from Angmar, bred for war. Wearing armor cobbled together from scavenged gear but effective nonetheless. They had weapons, crude but deadly. Axes and spears and curved blades designed to hack and tear. We had seconds to react. "Circle!" Orthier shouted. "Standard formation!" We formed up back to back, a tight defensive ring. It's what rangers did when outnumbered. Protect each other's backs. Make them come to you. Sell your life as expensively as possible, and maybe someone escapes. The orcs charged. What happened next was chaos. Pure, violent chaos. They came in a wave, screaming, weapons raised. We met them with steel and skill and 20 years of experience fighting in the dark places of the world. I killed the first orc that reached me with a thrust to the throat. It went down choking. The second one I took with a slash across the eyes, blinding it, then finished with a stab to the chest. Third one came at me with an axe. I ducked under the swing, hamstrung it as it passed, let it fall and moved to the next threat. Around me, the others were doing the same. Orthier was using his size and strength, every swing of his blade dropping an orc. Malbeth was faster, dancing between enemies, his sword finding gaps in armor with surgical precision. Eraglas fought with the economy of 30 years' experience. No wasted movement, every strike killing or crippling. And Gandalf was fighting too. But not like us. He wasn't using magic, not obviously. He was using his staff like a quarterstaff, striking with it, blocking with it. An orc would charge and he'd step aside, just slightly, perfectly timed, and the staff would lash out. The orc would drop, not wounded, dead. I didn't understand it. The strikes didn't look that hard. They shouldn't have been lethal. A staff blow to the head might knock someone out, but it wouldn't kill them. Not instantly. Not every time. But every orc that got close to Gandalf went down and didn't get up. Still, there were too many. For everyone we killed, 3 more appeared. They were trying to overwhelm us with numbers, and it was working. Malbeth went down first. I saw it happen. An orc got past his guard with a spear thrust to the side. The blade punched through his leather armor like it was cloth. He killed the orc that got him. One-handed sword thrust even as he was falling, but the wound was mortal. He bled out in under a minute, still trying to fight, until his strength gave out, and he just stopped. "Malbeth!" Curon screamed. The kid started to move toward him, but Eraglas grabbed him, pulled him back into formation. "He's gone! Stay in position!" We tightened the circle. 6 of us now instead of 7. The orcs pressed harder, sensing weakness. Dunhair went next. Arrow through the throat. One of the orc archers had finally found the range. He made a wet gurgling sound and fell. Died before he hit the ground. 5 of us. I was bleeding from a dozen cuts. Nothing mortal yet. But I was slowing down. My sword arm ached. My lungs burned. I'd lost count of how many orcs I'd killed. Didn't matter. There were always more. An orc champion pushed through the crowd. Massive thing, had to be 8 feet tall, wearing dwarf plate armor it had scavenged from some battlefield. It carried a warhammer that could crush a horse. Crude weapon, but in hands that strong, it didn't need to be fancy. It looked directly at Orthier, at the pack on his back. It knew. Somehow, it knew what we were carrying. The champion charged. Orthier tried to block, but that hammer swept him aside like he weighed nothing. He went down hard, the pack flying from his shoulders, landing in the dirt 10 feet away. The ring's leather case tumbled out. The champion reached for it. Time seemed to slow down. I saw Gandalf turn, saw his eyes lock onto the case, saw the calculation happen in his face. Too far away, too many orcs between him and the ring. No time, no way to reach it before the orc did. And I saw the decision. Gandalf moved. I'd never seen anyone move that fast. One moment he was 20 feet away, the next he was between the champion and the ring. I didn't see him cross the distance. He just was there. His staff came up and tapped the orc's wrist. Just a tap, barely more than a touch. The orc's hand exploded. Not broke, exploded, like something inside it had detonated. Bone fragments and blood sprayed everywhere. The champion screamed, a sound that was more shock than pain, and stumbled backward, clutching the stump where its hand had been. Gandalf bent down, picked up the ring case with one hand, and looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at us, at what remained of our group. 4 rangers, all wounded, all exhausted, all barely standing, surrounded by easily 200 orcs who were regrouping for the final push. His face changed. I can't describe it properly. Something in his expression shifted, like a mask slipping, like someone who'd been playing a role for so long they'd almost forgotten it was a role, suddenly remembering who they really were. "Close your eyes," he said quietly. His voice was different. Still his voice, but with something underneath it. Something that resonated in my chest, in my bones, in parts of me that had no business responding to sound. "What?" I started to say. "Close your eyes." Not loud, but absolute. The kind of voice that demanded obedience, not through volume, but through sheer authority. I closed my eyes. The world turned to light. Even through my eyelids I could see it. Brilliant, searing, white light that felt like standing too close to a forge. I felt heat on my face, on my exposed skin. Heard a sound. Not thunder, not wind. Something between the two that made the ground shake beneath my feet. The air itself seemed to vibrate. The orcs were screaming. 200 voices raised in terror and pain, and then silence. Complete. Absolute. Silence. No more orc cries. No more weapons clanging. No more drums in the distance. Nothing. Just wind moving through grass. "You can look now," Gandalf said. His voice was back to normal. Tired. Old. I opened my eyes. The orcs were gone. Not dead. Not bodies lying on the ground. Just gone. There were scorch marks on the grass where they'd been standing. Patterns in the dirt that looked almost like shadows burned into the earth. The smell of something burned, but not wood or flesh. Something else. Something I didn't have words for. The battlefield was empty, except for us. Gandalf was standing in the center of where the orc formation had been, still holding the ring case. His robes were smoking slightly, little wisps of vapor rising from the fabric. His staff had a faint glow to it that faded as I watched. His hat had fallen off. His face looked older, more lined, more tired than I'd ever seen anyone look. "We need to move," he said quietly. "Now, before more come." None of us moved. We were staring at him, at the empty battlefield, at the impossible thing that had just happened. What did you... Orthes started to say. We need to move. Gandalf's voice was firm, final. Not angry, but allowing no argument. Now. We moved. We gathered ourselves. Orthes' ribs were cracked, but he could walk. Curon had a deep cut on his arm that Eriglas bandaged quickly. I'd taken a blow to the head I didn't remember, but the bleeding had stopped. We were functional. Our dead we had to leave. Malbeth and Dunhair lying in the grass. We didn't have time for proper rites. Didn't have time for anything except running. We'll come back, Orthes said, looking at the bodies. We'll give them proper burial. We never did come back. The war moved on. The land changed. And eventually we forgot exactly where that valley was. Malbeth and Dunhair stayed there, unmarked, unmourned except in our memories. We fled south, moving as fast as our injuries allowed. Gandalf set a brutal pace. He didn't speak, didn't explain, didn't look at any of us. Just walked, staff in hand, eyes forward, like he was trying to outrun something. We made 15 miles before we couldn't go any further. Found a small copse of trees, hidden from the road, defensible if we had to fight again. We made camp. No fire, just cold rations and water, and the sound of 4 men breathing in the dark. I couldn't sleep. None of us could. Around midnight, I saw Gandalf sitting apart from the group, back against a tree, staring at nothing. His hands were in his lap. They were shaking. I'd seen men's hands shake after battle before, aftermath of fear and exhaustion. But Gandalf hadn't seemed afraid during the fight, and he didn't seem exhausted now. Just something else. Something I didn't have a word for. I walked over, sat down a few feet away, didn't say anything at first. You should be sleeping, Gandalf said without looking at me. Can't, I said. Keep seeing. What happened? He was quiet. What did happen? I asked. What did you do? What do you think I did? He asked back. I didn't know how to answer that. What had I seen? Light that made 200 orcs disappear. Heat that left scorch marks on stone. Power that felt like it could crack the world in half if it wanted to. I don't know, I admitted. I've never seen anything like that. Good, Gandalf said. Keep it that way. What does that mean? He finally looked at me, and his eyes. God, his eyes were old. Not physically old, but old in a way that had nothing to do with years, like looking into something that had existed since before the world was made. It means you're going to forget what you saw today, he said. It means you're not going to speak of it. Not to the other rangers, not to your chieftain, not to anyone. What happened in that valley stays in that valley. Do you understand? No, I said. I don't understand. You saved us. You saved the ring. You did something incredible. Why would you want to hide that? Because incredible things are dangerous, he said. Especially when they work. I didn't understand. Must have shown on my face. He sighed, looked back at his hands. They were still shaking. Have you ever wondered, he said slowly, why I don't do more? Why I let good men die fighting enemies I could destroy with a word? Why I seem content to wander and advise and help in small ways when I clearly have the power to end wars? I'd never thought about it. But now that he said it, I just thought, wizards had limits, I said. He laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. Limits, he repeated. Yes, I have limits, but not the kind you're thinking of. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Softer. Sadder. Power is a test, he said. The greatest test anyone ever faces. And the only way to pass the test is to refuse to take it. Do you understand what I mean? I didn't. Told him so. "Let me ask you something," he said. "That power you saw, that thing I did. If I used it every time we encountered orcs, how long do you think it would take before I was using it for everything? Before I was using it to make people do what I wanted them to do? Before I decided that I knew better than everyone else how the world should work, and I used my power to force it to be that way?" "You wouldn't do that," I said. "You're one of the good ones." "Am I?" he asked. "How do you know? Because I help people? Because I fight evil?" Sauron thinks he's helping people too. He thinks he's bringing order to a chaotic world. Every tyrant in history believed they were acting for the greater good. He held up his shaking hands. "These hands could reshape Middle-earth," he said quietly. "I could end poverty, end hunger, end war. I could make everyone safe, everyone fed, everyone living in perfect peace. All I'd have to do is take control, force people to do what's right, use my power to make the world the way I know it should be." "Then why don't you?" I asked. "Because," he said, "the moment I start using power to make people do what's right, I've already made them do something wrong. I've taken away their choice, their freedom, their right to be foolish, to make mistakes, to choose their own path, even if it's the wrong path. And a world where people have no choice, even if they're safe, even if they're fed, even if they're alive, that's not a world worth saving." I thought about that, really thought about it. "So you hold back," I said. "Always." "Always," he confirmed. "I let people fight their own battles, make their own choices, even when those choices lead to death, even when I could save them, because the alternative, a world where I decide everything, where my power is the final word on all matters, that world is slavery. It's just slavery with a benevolent master instead of a cruel one. And it's still slavery." "Then why break that rule today?" I asked. "Why use your power now?" He looked at the pack containing the ring. "Because some things matter more than my rules," he said. "That ring isn't just a symbol, it's hope. Hope that one day someone will rise who has the right, the legitimacy, the bloodline to unite the free peoples against darkness. Without that hope, we're just fighting a holding action, delaying the inevitable. That ring is proof that the line continues, that the possibility remains, that there's still a chance for a different future." "So it was worth it," I said. He was quiet for a long time. "Ask me again in 100 years, he finally said. "After I've spent a century wondering if I could have found another way, if I should have let the ring fall and trusted that something else would work out. If I took the easy path because I was afraid instead of the right path, because I was wise." He looked at me directly. "I need you to promise me something," he said. "What?" "Promise me you'll never speak of what you saw, never tell anyone what I did. Because if word spreads that I have that kind of power, people will expect me to use it. Every time someone's dying, every time evil seems to be winning, they'll ask why I'm not doing more, why I'm not saving them, and I'll have to explain over and over that I can't, that using that power would destroy me more surely than any enemy ever could. And eventually, I'll get tired of explaining. Eventually, I'll give them what they want. And on that day, Middle-earth will have traded one dark lord for another. I'll be everything I came here to oppose, and I won't even realize it's happening until it's too late." I looked at him. Really looked at him. At this person I'd thought was just a wandering wizard. Someone interesting and helpful, but ultimately just another traveler on the roads. Now I saw something else. Something vast and terrible and impossibly old, wearing the shape of a kindly old man like a disguise. "I promise," I said. He nodded, stood up, walked back to his spot by the tree. I don't think he slept that night. I know I didn't. We reached Rivendell 6 days later. The rest of the journey was quiet. Too quiet. We kept expecting another ambush, another attack, but nothing came. Almost like the enemy's forces were afraid to come near us now, or afraid to come near Gandalf. Rivendell was a shock after weeks in the wilderness. Clean water, soft beds, food that didn't come from a travel pack, healers who could do more than field dressing. Arthur's ribs were set properly. Curon's arm was stitched and bandaged with skill. My head wound was treated with herbs I couldn't identify that took away the headache I'd been carrying for days. We delivered the Ring of Barahir to Lord Elrond. He took it with solemn thanks, promised to keep it safe until the day came when it could be returned to the rightful king. "Your service honors the memory of your ancestors," he said, "and the sacrifice of those who fell will not be forgotten." But I knew they would be forgotten. Malbeth and Donhair were already fading in memory. In a few years, they'd just be names. In a few decades, even the names would be lost. That's the price of being a ranger. You fight and die in the dark, and nobody remembers. Before we left Rivendell, I sought out Gandalf one last time, found him in one of the gardens, sitting alone, pipe smoke drifting up into the clear sky. "Heading back north?" he asked when he saw me. "Yeah," I said. "Back to the Watch." "Good," he said. "The north needs you." I sat down next to him. We watched the sun set over the valley in silence for a while. "Can I ask you something?" I finally said. "You can ask," he said. "I may not answer." "That power you used," I said. "Could you use it to end the war? To destroy Sauron? To save Middle-earth once and for all?" He was quiet for so long, I thought he wouldn't answer. "Yes," he finally said. "I could end the war. I could destroy Sauron's armies. I could probably even destroy Sauron himself, given the right circumstances." "Then why?" "Because," he interrupted gently, "I would destroy Middle-earth in the process. Not the land, the people, their freedom, their right to choose who they want to be. I would save them from Sauron by becoming something worse than Sauron. A benevolent tyrant is still a tyrant, and tyranny, no matter how well-intentioned, is still slavery." He looked at me. "Do you understand now why I hold back?" he asked. "Why I seem weak when I'm anything but?" I thought about everything I'd seen, everything he'd said, the way his hands had shaken after using his power, the fear in his eyes when he talked about what he could become. "I think so," I said. "You're strong enough to save everyone, and wise enough to know you shouldn't." He smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine, and, for just a moment, not burdened by the weight of thousands of years. "You're a wise man, Halbarad," he said. "Your people are lucky to have you. Remember your promise." "I will," I said. And I did. For 60 years. But now I'm old. Older than I ever thought I'd get. My children are grown. Their children are growing. My time is running short. The wars are over. The king returned, just like Gandalf said he would. Aragorn, son of Arathorn, wearing the Ring of Barahir on his hand as he was crowned, the line unbroken, the hope fulfilled. And Gandalf is gone, sailed west with the elves, beyond the reach of any promise I made. So I'm breaking that promise now, because someone needs to know the truth. Gandalf wasn't weak. He was never weak. He was the strongest being in Middle-earth, and he spent every day of his long, long life pretending to be something less, something manageable, something that wouldn't frighten people or make them dependent on his power. Because he understood something most of us never learn. The greatest power isn't the ability to change the world. It's the wisdom to know when not to. I saw Gandalf's true power once. Just once. For a few seconds on a battlefield when there was no other choice. And I've spent 60 years understanding why he never used it again. Because power like that, power that could end wars, that could reshape nations, that could force everyone to do what's right, power like that doesn't belong in anyone's hands. Not Sauron's, not Saruman's, not even Gandalf's. The only safe power is power that refuses to be used. The only trustworthy strength is strength that restrains itself. The only wisdom is knowing that some fights have to be fought by those whose fight it is, not by those who could win it for them. That's what I learned in that valley. That's what Gandalf showed me when he broke his own rules to save a ring, to preserve hope, to keep alive the possibility of a future that might be better. He could have saved the world 1,000 times over. But he was wise enough to let the world save itself. If you found this story thought-provoking, or if it changed how you see power, or strength, or the difference between helping and controlling, I hope you'll subscribe. I have more untold tales from Middle-earth coming. Stories about the moments between the moments, the witnesses to great events, the people whose names aren't in the histories, but whose experiences shaped the world. Thank you for listening to my story. Don't forget to leave a comment and let me know what you thought. And remember, the next time you see weakness, ask yourself if it might be strength in disguise. The next time someone seems powerless, wonder if they're choosing not to use the power they have. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is nothing at all. Sometimes the greatest victory is the one you never fight. And sometimes the truest wisdom is knowing that saving people from themselves isn't saving them at all.